The classification of taxes might be simple to understand, but as for you, a student, it would be more or easier to answer questions if you understand the fundamental difference between this classification of taxes. So we know they are personal property and excise tax, and we have the other, the custom duties. However, in answering again, it would be a big help if we know the basic or the fundamental of their differences. To answer this question, it is important for us to know what is property tax, how it differs from the excise tax. First is property tax is a tax levied on the mere ownership. So take note, it is levied in the mere ownership. So if you possess a property, even if you use that or not, that is taxable as property tax. Property tax is different from when you sell the property at gain. The capital gain is not a property tax. That is an excise tax. So again, to emphasize, property tax is just a tax for a privilege in the ownership of a property, possession of the property, or the use of the property. Now, the relevance of the use of the property comes when you are applying for tax exemption. Use of property is the basis for granting tax exemption to religion or to religious group, education, right, and even to the hospital. Is the use of the property, and we're talking about building the real property. So that's how the use of the property becomes relevant in here, in the definition of, or in the classification of a property. What I mean on the classification of the property tax, on how it is imposed on a particular property. The tax liability arises simply from holding the property and not necessarily from the specific transaction or act. Again, even if you just possess that without using it, even if you just idle it, you still have to pay the property tax. To differentiate it from the excise tax, we need to understand what is excise tax. So I want you to understand that yung excise tax is a tax imposed on performance. Compared it with the property tax, it is imposed by mere ownership, possession, and the use of the property. But in the excise tax, when there is a performance of a specific act, like example, you are selling, you are working and earning something or earning income, you're enjoying privilege, that's the excise tax. Like you import goods, you import luxury cars, what is added in there is the excise tax. When you manufacture certain minerals or certain items that are subject to excise tax, because manufacturing is certain act of a privilege, you were allowed by the government to do such thing. So therefore, in the excise tax, the liability is triggered by an act or transaction. That's how simple it is. While the use of property is triggered by, the property tax is triggered by the use or ownership or possession of property, the excise is triggered by act. Okay, because it is a privilege tax. Now, evaluating each of these choices, if you see, for instance, in letter A says here that property tax is a national tax. This is wrong. First of all, the property tax is a local tax. Now let's try to review the note that we have about the property tax. And the local tax level, we only have two taxes. We have the community tax and the property tax. Those are the three. Don't be confused with the doc stamp. Doc stamp is a national tax, documentary stamp tax. So first, that makes that wrong in letter A. In letter B, the property tax is a tax where the burden is intended to be borne by the person on whom it is imposed. Okay, something vague. Whereas excise tax is levied directly on the object of the transaction, making it easier to shift the burden to another party. It's not always like that. So again, excise tax again is on the privilege of action. Here, the tax where the burden is intended to be borne is talking about direct tax that cannot be shifted. Here also is talking about indirect, the concept about indirect tax, and it's not answering the question here. Question 13. Letter C is a property tax is levied directly on ownership. Well, we have here use and disposal of the property, independent of taxable event. Again, independent of taxable event. While excise tax is tax imposed on the performance or act, the enjoyment of the privilege and the transfer of the property. So to repeat what I said earlier, excise tax is equal to act or of the privilege, while the real properties is on the ownership. Remember this. The letter D, both taxes are essentially direct taxes. Well, not necessary, because some of the excise tax are not direct. They are indirect. Example, VAT is an excise tax, percentage tax. They're not direct. They are indirect. So it's always proportional tax on the specific commodity. So this is not true. The property tax is always progressive. It's not, because the property tax actually is computed on a proportional. It's like it's an ad valorem. This is proportional. Okay. So that's the question. That's the answer. So we have clear answer here. Letter C.